great questions. So sad that he gets literally zero fucking answers.
I know! She says, go with what your heart tells you. Fuck off! Fuck off! You know what? I'm gonna throw car batteries into the ocean because of you. God!
Hello, and welcome to Notes from the Oracle. I'm Connor, and together with Jack, my co-host from Cabin 6, we're going beyond Half-Blood Hill to take a closer look at the electrifying mythology of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Book 1, The Lightning Thief. Before we start this chapter, I wanted to quickly let you all know that we have a special announcement at the end of today's episode, so make sure you stick around until the very end. Chapter 17. We shop for waterbeds. Which, Jack, I'm looking at this title, and I'm looking at some of the other titles we've seen. We shop for waterbeds? Pretty low-tier title. What do you think?
Kinda mid. Honestly,
Yeah.
like the rest of this chapter, kinda mid. I'll come out and say it. Connor, in real life, it has been a few weeks since we've sat down and recorded. However, I do specifically recall being a little frustrated that we were not jumping straight to the underworld in this chapter. I was really excited. And you were like, yeah, no, there's still this whole thing that they have to go through. But we'll see. Next chapter, we'll see if you still feel that way. Connor, I'm tired of the foreplay. I'm tired of the preamble. And truthfully, I don't want this chapter here. It was fine. There were some important things that happened, but this is another. I feel like we've been referring to them as bridge chapters.
Yeah.
They bring us from one point to another point, and it's okay. But I know that there's better stuff just one chapter away. And this felt like filler. It felt like filler that had a couple of important things kind of spread throughout. So I will leave the rest of my, we'll say, more comprehensive review when we're doing the chapter recap at the end. But until then, I say let's jump into it. So the gang has to get out of Vegas.
Yep.
And Annabeth has a good idea. She gets everybody into the back of a taxi and says, we're going to LA. And the cabbie says, well, that's all very far distance. It's like 300 miles. You're going to have to pay for that up front. And Annabeth, this is very clever. I did enjoy this. She holds up the Lotus Casino unlimited VIP platinum card and says, do you accept these? And he's like, sure. So she swipes it, and just a big ass infinity sign shows up. There's infinite money. There is no limit. And the cabbie's like, sure, yeah, man. Great. I'll get you there imminently. I'll step on it. Which, a couple implications there.
Yeah.
One, I think Annabeth just crashed the economy. That is just instant, infinite money. The concept of scarcity now it's gone. The price of the dollar is now worth nothing because of her. And two, I guess this is more of an implication that I don't recall if it carries forward. Do they ever have money problems again, Connor?
They do, because they give the driver the card, remember?
Okay.
She says, you can keep the change. So, I was about to say, your testament to the economy is completely tanked. It's not, because whoever this cabbie is smart, and when they gave him an infinite money glitch, he somehow manages to go under the radar. This man is living up his best life, spending just enough to get by under the radar. That is my personal headcanon, and I'm sticking with it. It's either that or he goes back to the Lotus Casino and gets consumed. By the games, not by people. The Lotus Eaters don't eat people. They eat lotuses.
Now, all right. I thought, like, well, the keep the change thing, but she never says, oh, I'm going to give you the card. And I don't remember it saying that they handed him the card. I thought she was just being kind of like glib, you know? Like, yeah, keep the change. But they get to keep the card. That would be really stupid if they gave that up, Connor. That would be really dumb. Are you telling me that's what happened? Is that confirmed?
I think this group of 12-year-olds, well, two 12-year-olds and a 20-something-year-old just gave away an infinite money glitch. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe this is one of those small details that comes up over and over again, and I've just completely blitzed it from memory. But I do not think there's a moment in like Sea of Monsters where they're like, and it's fine because we pulled out our Lotus Casino cash card and we had infinite money. I think
Mhm.
they threw away infinite money.
Great. Cool. I'll keep that in mind. I'm gonna keep hoping that they didn't do that. More specifically, I'm gonna hope that Annabeth wasn't the one to do that, because she's better than that, Connor. She's smarter than that.
One would think so, but nonetheless, it does work, which is nice. So
It
the
does.
driver, I like that the cigar fell out of the driver's mouth. He looked at us, his eyes wide. Where to in Los Angeles? Your Highness?
Yeah. It's a really good exchange. I will say, I'm coming in hot with this chapter. Again, it's been a while since we've recorded. I'm getting back into it. I'm excited. The social interactions in this chapter are really good. There's some really funny exchanges. The cabbie is very funny, and I love how Percy notes that the title of Your Highness makes Annabeth sit up a little bit straighter. It's clear that she likes that.
That was really fun. I felt like the chapter flip flopped a lot back and forth from, all right, we need to give you important exposition. Let's balance it with some genuine good humor. And the
Mhm.
humor lands, I would say, for most, if not all, of the chapter. But those exposition moments can be a little bit dry, this one, I'd say.
Yes, I agree. Whereas in some, like, prior chapters, I feel like we've really talked about how good Rick has been with balancing out this natural dialogue and exposition with moments of action or interpersonal kind of silliness. It doesn't flow as well. It feels a little bit more congested, I guess. It's a very busy chapter.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. I don't think that this chapter has the same room to breathe. Even right here, you've got the great joke of, I could tell she liked your highness, and she straightens up. And then they start talking about Percy's last dream from last chapter, the one where we've got this mysterious voice talking to the pit, which holds Kronos. And after Kronos realizes that Percy has been listening in, Kronos sends Percy on a little dream vision quest that throws a lot of red herrings towards Hades, because that is what they need Percy to think.
Mhm.
So this is Annabeth, Grover, and Percy trying to reason out all of those red herrings and figure things out. But the one thing that really caught me was when Percy mentions that the throne room wasn't the main part of the dream.
Mhm.
That voice from the pit, I don't know, it just didn't feel like a god's voice. To have them be so close and then still not get there, it's like, oh my god, you're asking all the right questions, but you're just somehow not able to get there. And Annabeth is even clearly
Oh,
spinning her wheels on this. And she's doing
Connor.
that face of like, I think I know, but I'm not gonna say it. And it's like, ugh, just out with it.
Connor, there's a big fucking pin. It's right there right now. All right, you see that? See that
Mhm.
big ass pin? We are gonna get back to that in a bit. But that whole little rant that you just went on, I want you to know bar for bar, I am going to do it again later in this chapter.
But with that, the title that Percy was forgetting was The Crooked One, is what Luke refers to Kronos as when he's talking to him, which is a sick title. We'll come back to the
Yeah, it's a good
Silent
one.
One and the Rich One, because those are also pretty fun titles, and I dug up the history around them. And this is where they start going, something's clearly not right. Grover says, oh, that throne room sounds like Hades. And Percy's like, yeah, but I don't think that was important. And Annabeth's eyes go wide as soon as Percy says, it didn't feel like a god's voice. And then he goes, what? And she says, oh, nothing. And I'm like, not nothing. Very important.
Yeah, vitally important. But again, I feel like I'm okay to a certain degree with excusing this, not only because I'm a staunch and strident Annabeth defender in every and all case, which is why I refuse to believe she gave up infinite money. But this is similar to like early on in the book where she knew that Percy was one of the big three and was like, well, it's got to be Zeus, right? Even
Yeah.
though there was all this evidence that could have been to the contrary, she just knew it could be a possibility, but did not want it to be a possibility. So she kept it in the back of her mind, like, oh, fuck, this might actually be what it is. I'm not going to think that way, though. This is time for positive thinking.
So they're then talking about the items that this
Mhm.
mysterious voice that we know as Luke failed to bring to Hades. And Percy mentions that they were looking for two things. If I'd already retrieved the bolt, why would I be traveling to the underworld?
Oh,
Verse,
Percy's, like, on it this chapter.
he is. He
Really
really
on top
is.
of things.
At the end of it all, he says, I got the feeling I was missing one simple, critical piece of information. And I was like,
Mhm.
yep, you are. You're missing
Yeah.
Kronos being in the mix. And if you knew that, suddenly every single detail falls into place. That's it.
Yeah. I got nothing else to add, you're right. It's interesting. There's another set of stakes that we're reminded of, or at the very least, I was reminded of. So we've been going full bore towards the underworld. We got to get to the underworld. We got to get to the underworld. We got to get to the underworld. Even though things don't seem to be adding up and something's a little weird here, the underworld is where we need to be no matter what. And now Percy is saying, all right, we are hurtling head first towards the underworld at 95 miles an hour in this Las Vegas taxi cab. But let's say we get there and we find out that we are totally wrong. At that point, we're screwed. Like, we don't have any time to correct ourselves. So now he's starting to doubt, should we even be going to the underworld? There's
Which
a lot
is,
of doubt being sowed here, which makes
I was going to
sense.
say, yeah, that's a good thought process to be having. Are we headed the right direction?
Yes, and Annabeth is taking this it's interesting kind of flip-flop. I feel like Percy has taken more of the role of the reassurance, saying, "Yes, of course, we gotta do this. It's the right thing to do." Because Annabeth, she's very smart, but because of that, she gets into kind of an analysis paralysis. She has her doubts. And in this instance, Percy, who is clearly spiraling, again, reasonably so, Annabeth just says, the answer's in the underworld. You saw the spirits of the dead. We're doing the right thing. And I don't know that she really believes that. But again, I feel like it's one of these scenarios of at this point, it's too late to think anything else. We just have to keep pressing on. Worst case scenario, we're wrong and we fail anyways.
At least we tried.
Exactly. I really like how Percy is now contextualizing his environment through mythological perspectives. He's talking about as the cab is speeding west, every gust of wind through Death Valley sounded like a spirit of the dead. Every time the brakes hissed on an 18-wheeler, it reminded me of Echidna's reptilian voice.
Yeah.
I think that's really neat. And there's another instance later in the chapter where we get Percy's understanding of how his frame of reference for reality, but also just his life, has shifted so much in such a short period of time. For all the crap that I have given and will continue giving this chapter, there are some really solid nuggets. I want to make it abundantly clear. This is not a bad chapter.
Not at
We've
all.
just seen what really great chapters are and what can be done in them. So I hold it to a higher standard.
But with that, sunset happens, the taxi drops them off at the beach in Santa Monica, and Percy says that LA beaches look exactly the way they do in the movies, only it smelled worse.
Which is true.
Yeah, that feels pretty accurate. There were carnival rides lining the pier, palm trees lining the sidewalks, and homeless guys sleeping in the sand dunes, while surfer dudes waited for the perfect waves. So, they head down to the beach because that's where they've been told to go by the Nereid in St. Louis. Annabeth is, of course, asking the right question. What now?
So what I had just mentioned a couple minutes ago, apparently this happens much sooner.
Yeah, I was
These
noticing.
this shift of reference, these reference points. We get this point where Percy is talking about how he's looking out at the Pacific and watching the setting sun, and it looks like gold with the sun glistening off of the waves. And he thinks about how long it had been since he'd stood out on the beach at Montauk, on the opposite side of the country, looking at a totally different sea. And again, I just really think that that's a cool point of reference that Rick has included here. There's a lot of symbolism that we could dig into with that, but the idea of Percy having grown and traveled so far, and him finally coming to terms with that for the first time during this entire adventure is really cool. And the moment doesn't stick around too long, and maybe it's me just digging into it a little too deeply, but that tiny little 4-line paragraph really stood out to me because it made me reflect on the entire book. I did the thing where I'm looking at the pages and then I turn the book and I'm looking at the top of it. And like, dude, we're really close to being done. We're properly in the latter portion of the book now.
You said that we could really dig into the symbolism here, and I want to, because I think that it is so beautiful that they arrive at this place at sunset in particular. A lot of the earlier portion of the book, especially around Percy being placed in Hermes' cabin, I was talking about how I saw this book as the death of Percy's mortal life and his journey into his demigod life, and how that's kind of a rebirth of a certain sense. Especially in this chapter where we're leading into going into the underworld, I think the sunset motif is perfect.
Yeah.
This is their final day on Earth, kind of.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This is the moment where, as you said, Percy is realizing he's had this massive perspective shift. When he got to Montauk, he did not get any of this. Reminder, when he gets to Camp Half-Blood, he's still like, "What do you mean, godly parent? My mom is Sally." Montauk, he knows nothing still. And so to get from that early morning rainstorm where you can't see the sky to a beautiful, clear day where Percy suddenly everything makes sense. Like, even just look at that. The difference between Montauk was a storm.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was clouded, nothing was visible, and he couldn't even enjoy the space that he wanted to be. And here he is in a place that, by his own admission, is kind of disgusting and smelly, and he is able to appreciate the beauty of it. I think it's a really powerful message for the importance of moving forward even when you don't want to. He would have preferred to just stay at Montauk, but if you stay at Montauk, nothing happens, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Game over. The world ends in war and chaos. But here there's hope. And I think this whole page continues that. He talks about how it's impressive that there's a god that controls 2/3 of the Earth's surface, which is covered
Yeah.
in water. And then I like that that transitions just into, "I stepped into the surf." Single
Mm-hmm.
paragraph, just one sentence. And Annabeth starts questioning him. "Percy, what are you doing?" And he doesn't even respond. He just walks in. To me, that is the symbolism of the perfect, full acceptance of the situation.
Yeah.
We're going from in the car, Percy is starting to doubt things, to, you know what, radical acceptance. That is the only way to make it through this. And I just thought
Mm-hmm.
that every part of this was beautiful. This page was amazing.
Yeah. Everything you said, I agree with. And I'm glad that you were willing to do a deep dive into it because all of those things really stuck out to me as well. I really, really enjoy seeing Percy not be such a dumbass. He's a dumbass in an endearing way, but he's just grown so much in such a short period of time. And having this environment and this setting really personify that, I'm a sucker for that stuff. What can I say? I love symbolism and storytelling through environment. I do really like, and I made specific note of him walking into the surf wordlessly with just this quiet acceptance,
Yeah.
as opposed to, again, I also clocked in driving away from the Minotaur, being dragged out of the car. There is this now just full willingness and acceptance that he is almost at peace with. Whether or not he wants to be is still up for debate and an entirely other question, but he is willing to do this for the sake of the mission, his friends, the world, his mom, whatever order you want to put that in for a hierarchy. And it just shows a level of profound maturity that I don't know Percy had 10, 12 chapters before. It's
Yeah.
very cool to see.
To keep going at this page from the metaphor perspective, Percy is stepping into the ocean as well for the very first time since he
Yeah.
learned that he was a son of Poseidon. This is, yet again, the acceptance of his demigod life. Annabeth
Mhm.
is over there talking about how polluted and toxic that water must be. And Percy, if you could take that water being polluted and toxic as all of the drama that being a demigod
Yes.
entails and ensues, the pain that it is going to cause him, he's stepping into it because it's unavoidable. That is
Mhm.
the mission. That's what he has to do. This is his life now. And he is a son of Poseidon. So he's going to step in, take it on. And I love that there's still that little moment of hesitation. I
Mhm.
held my breath at first. It's difficult to intentionally inhale water. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. I gasped. Sure enough, I could breathe normally. You could read that as Percy being overwhelmed by the drastic change in situation, trying to stay afloat before realizing I just have to accept the things that have been dealt to me, the hand that has been dealt to me in life,
Yeah.
and make something of it. I have to
Mhm.
persevere. I have to breathe underwater because that's the way forward.
Yes. This first proper step that he's taking is scary, but he does it, and it is followed up with an even more terrifying reality, which is, "Oh, buddy, you're not even in it yet. You're still in the shallow end."
Hmm.
And that shows there's even greater depths to reach, literally, quite literally speaking in this instance, but also metaphorically. This adorable little mako shark or mako shark, it's very puppy coated, it's very fun, starts dragging Percy along to this edge of the sandbar that he's in, to where the water just drops off. It's where the ocean properly begins. And it's just darkness, just a huge chasm. It's described as like standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon at midnight. You can't see much, but there's void right there.
It's so well done.
And it's intimidating, but Percy, there have been several chasms that he has seen in his nightmares, which have filled him with dread. This one doesn't, though. And this is skipping ahead just a little bit, and I will come back and talk about, the whole conversation he has. But he, for a bit before heading back to the surface, says, I really want to go more. I want to see the kingdom of Poseidon. I want to see my father's court and what else is down there. There is a curiosity, there is a yearning, there is a desire, as opposed to a recoiling, a fear, or a dread that has been felt with, say, the pit of Tartarus in his dream.
Yeah.
And I like that we also can see this as him on his own terms reconciling a bit with his dad and the nature of his dad, right? And that just goes hand in hand with him accepting his demigod nature, but also on a personal level. He, a lot of times in the book, has really said a lot of negative things about his father, and again, I would say rightfully so. But the first mention he has here is, like you had said before, how could I be the son of someone that powerful? There's a recognition there now.
I really like the idea that this drop off, this huge, unknowable, darkened chasm, in a certain sense, represents how much there is to Poseidon through his eternal life that Percy
Mhm.
literally cannot know. And he
Yeah.
just has to look at it, and rather than seeing it with fear or wonder, he just has to take it in with awe. It is not
Yes.
good, it is not bad, it just is and
Mhm.
exists. And I think that's really cool. I think that's really well
Yeah.
done. And for all of the, this chapter's kind of mid, this page, these 2 pages, I do think are really, really well done. And I think
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a lot that you could write full essays on just these 2 pages.
Mhm. Yeah. I just wish that the chapter didn't peak so early.
It does peak a bit early.
So, all right. You have any more praise, Connor? Or can we get back to the stuff the people want, which is us shitting on literature?
Let's get back to the real stuff.
Okay. So Percy, he has this beautiful moment of reconciling with who he is and understanding his father on a deeper level. Whatever. The real important stuff is the plot moves forward. So this little shark pulls Percy down to the edge, and we get this visage that we've seen before, a glimmering image of a woman. Percy keeps saying, very similar to his mom, calling out to him. She has this flowing black hair, a dress made of green silk, and light flickering around her. Percy, I love, he notes that her eyes are so distractingly beautiful, he hardly notices the stallion-sized seahorse she was riding.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I have a very brief interjection, and that's that I wonder if this is a hippocampi, but with everything else, Rick was just like, I'm just gonna describe it as a big ol' seahorse because
Yeah.
I literally do not have the time today to write about this. Just because I feel like in the future, we'll never hear giant seahorse again. We'll just hear hippocampi from here on
Uh-huh.
out. That's it.
Yeah. It's very, like, first book coded.
I was gonna say, it feels like there was this moment where it's like, are we gonna do hippocampi? I don't know. I'll just call it a giant.
I don't know.
Here's
But
book
what I
2.
do
We're
know is
definitely
that
doing
words have
hippocampi.
meaning and names have power. That I can.
Yes.
The seahorses are big and names matter. Okay.
I like the big seahorse, but with that, she gives us some important exposition. And I like that we get this little bit of contextualization of suddenly I remembered faces in the waves off Montauk Beach when I was a little boy, reflections of smiling women. Like so many of the weird things in my life, I'd never given it much thought before. And I do think that's kind of cute. I like these little
I
moments where
agree.
Percy gets to recognize things from his childhood and be like, oh, dad was watching me.
Yeah, and I love how it's not explicitly said that Percy recognizes, "Oh, that was my father watching me." It's just there for the reader to piece together on their own. "We've been watching you with great interest." And then he has these flashes of childhood memories that, I guess he doesn't say if they're good or bad. I'm assuming they're good because they're based in, Montauk, which is like his haven. But it's neat. And it does show that, as we've already talked about at length, Poseidon is very multifaceted, and that the scathing criticism that Percy has had of Poseidon and these assumptions that he's made, like Percy, Poseidon's a bit of a rebel. Again, Percy wasn't supposed to exist. The fact that he exists is breaking an oath on the river Styx. That's old news. But Poseidon, the idea that he's watching over Percy, even by proxy of his kind of lesser subjects, that's a big no-no. And I have to believe that Percy sees that and thinks, okay, Dad, I see you. I see you standing up against the man, going against the tide, pun not intended.
I think it helps as well that in this literal very moment, this Nereid is helping Percy, which is Poseidon indirectly trying to help Percy, even though
Oh,
he is
yeah.
explicitly forbidden from that. So,
But here's why it matters that Percy remembers this stuff, though. Because in the chapter with Medusa, I think it was the Medusa chapter, Percy says, "Oh, so Dad suddenly shows up now that he needs something."
yeah,
But that's not the case. Percy is now recognizing that Dad was there. I just couldn't recognize that. I was unable to. And again, whether that's fair or unfair, whole other can of worms.
there's a lot to
But it's
unpack
still
with the
cool.
gods are your parents part of the novels. Deliberately so. That's not like an unintended
Yes,
consequence. But it really does feel like this is where the book is starting to paint an empathetic picture for Poseidon. Percy's
yes.
about to undergo the hardest part of his journey, the most miserable, entering the underworld. So you kind of need that reminder that
I thought you were going to say shopping for waterbeds, but that too. The underworld's pretty tough.
you know what? I wouldn't want a waterbed. You're right. That
Me
would be
neither, man.
miserable. But no, this is where we're entering the darkest hour of the story. So it is
Mhm.
important that Percy has this other thing that's helping drive him forward. This inspiration from, you know what, maybe my dad did care. Maybe I am doing something good, which is nice because Poseidon is in his own way trying to help as the Nereid hands 3 white pearls, which we know are going to be the escape method by which they exit the underworld. Because apparently, getting in and out of the underworld, not easy. Not easy at all. Few mortals have ever done this and survived. Orpheus, who had great music skill, Hercules, who had great strength, and Houdini, who could escape even the depths of Tartarus.
Which, one, love the continuity. This is, I
Yep,
believe, the second time we've heard about Houdini escaping from
being
the
a
underworld.
demigod. Yep.
Two, why was he in Tartarus? What did he do?
I didn't even put together that they said he went all the way down to
He
Tartarus.
was in super hell. Why?
Uh,
Why was he in super hell?
what was Houdini doing? I'm like now racking my brain to think if there's anything that could have happened that would have mandated that Houdini went there. Is this just implying that Houdini actually, like, instead of escaping his stunts, full on friggin' died and was just like, I'll just come back the hard way
On it, maybe that's right, because that is how it works, isn't it? If you want to get to the doors of death, you have to go through
through
Tartarus.
Tartarus? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that could be
Crazy.
it. I think that is the answer. In which case, Houdini, incredibly baller. Which I also like the idea of when he does finally die because his liver ruptures. He's like, I am not doing that shit again. That was hard.
I'll stay dead this time. I am
Yeah,
not
I'm
going
just
back to
gonna stay
Tartarus.
here.
Have I earned Elysium yet?
Yeah, seriously.
But then we get a very vague reference to the prophecy, as the Nereid says, the oracles have foretold a great and terrible future for you, should you survive to manhood. Which,
Yeah,
funny that you define 16 as manhood, because I might have defined
manhood.
16 as manhood when I was 16, but I do
Yeah.
not define that a decade later as manhood.
Hey, man. I mean, they're Greek. I don't know. They're from another time. It's just how it works, I guess. But all right, Connor, that big ass pin.
Oh, yeah.
See it? Still hanging
Mhm.
there? I'm gonna take that big both hands aren't necessary for taking this big ass pin
Oh,
down.
my.
Throughout this entire interaction, Percy is asking, much like we mentioned earlier in the chapter, phenomenal questions. He's
Yes.
asking very good questions. And you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I just put it together. I saw my note about it too. Go ahead.
Percy does not waste any time at all. He is told things, he asks questions, good ones, pertinent ones. He is given stuff. He asks questions about them. And then this fuck ass water spirit says, believe in yourself. And he says, wait, well, hold on. You specifically said that I need to beware the gifts. These are gifts. Do I need to be careful about these? Am I in danger? She says, oh, believe in yourself. She's like fading away into the distance. He's like, you're literally still talking to me. You have an entire paragraph where you're just saying nonsense. Could you just tell me what I need to beware? What are the gifts? And she says, blessed be you, hero. And he's like, dude, you're still leaving and you're still talking to me throughout all of this time. You probably could just tell me what the problem with the gifts are. And then she's gone.
I love that if you just read Percy's questions, you would imagine he has everything. What will happen? What about the warning?
Yes.
At the
Yes.
river, you said not to trust the gifts. What gifts? Great questions. So sad that he gets literally zero fucking answers.
I know. She says, go with what your heart tells you. Fuck off. Fuck off. You know what? I'm going to throw car batteries into the ocean because of you. God.
I think that really goes against the underpinned environmentalist message.
Well, you know what? The nature spirits, they suck. I'll say it. If they were more helpful, okay? I can't help but feel like Grover would be kind of pissed off too if he heard all this. He'd be like, what the fuck?
He
Percy
says, you know
finally
what?
is like on it. He's asking good questions. He's being efficient with his wording. He's being direct. And you don't give him anything. What are you, Chiron? That's his gig. Did he pay you off? Did Chiron pay you off to not fucking give answers to questions that Percy's directly asking? It's ridiculous.
I have nothing to add, dude. You fucking nailed it. Oh my god.
It just, I literally, as I was reading this, I reread a few times. I was like, am I missing something? No. Percy just got fucked over by theatrics again. Again. And that really soured my mood for, I think, the rest of the chapter. I think this was it.
Dude, I get it. I have nothing to add. I was so mad writing down my notes in my book of just like, why? Why are you
No.
not telling him? That's it. And then we move on.
Yep. This is the point where Percy's like, I wanted to follow her. I wanted to see the court of Poseidon. But he looks back up to the surface, the sunset darkening, and he's like, my friends are there. We don't have a lot of time left. I
Gotta
need to
go.
go. And he once again willingly goes back into this shit scenario that he is embroiled in.
Yeah.
Because he could. He genuinely could just go down to his father's palace or court or whatever and just hide out. Be like, yeah, couldn't do it. Sorry. I'm going to just ride out this war here.
We know he has a healing factor in water. I guarantee it
Mhm.
wouldn't be like you're gonna starve on the way there or anything. You're in the sea and son of the sea
Yeah.
god. You would be fine. You could leave it all behind. And he doesn't.
He could
And that's
literally
commendable.
have plankton just go into his mouth. He could be like a whale. He could filter feed. They do it for him.
That's so true. They would. He
Mhm.
could literally just be like, I will you. And they would do it.
Yes. And they'd say, oh, yeah. Blood for the blood god. Krill for the sea god. Woo.
Absolutely. But instead, he arrives back on the beach. And as he gets back up to the shore, he shows them the pearls that he received from the Nereid, and Annabeth grimaces. No gift comes without a price.
But they're free, says Percy,
I
which
love
is,
that.
you know what? We're back. Maybe Percy's only really smart in the water because he's back on his bullshit.
It's part of his healing factor.
And I love Annabeth doesn't take the bait. She just goes, no, and she shakes her head.
Good try. No.
Mm-mm, no, uh-uh. Mm-mm.
And there is a price. It's subtle and hidden, but it is that there are only 3 pearls. Only 3 ways to escape. Not enough for all of them. You will fail to save what matters most in the end. There's that prophecy.
Yeah, sorry, Grover.
They then mention yet again Ares' backpack, just to remind us that we have it, because they're pulling spare change out of there. And mind you, Jack, they're pulling spare change from Ares' backpack, not using our unlimited credit card.
Yep, yep. Maybe
Just
they just
saying.
don't want to like draw attention to themselves.
It's 2005.
Maybe
The bus is cash only. Yeah.
that too. Bus is cash only. It is 2005.
I did specifically get a little weirded out by the reminder of how old this novel is when they start talking about how they'd never heard of DOA recording studios and they couldn't find a way from the underworld address slip. Hello, pre Google Maps
I
existence.
know.
What the fuck?
Well, see, that's the thing. It wasn't like pre-internet. It's like pre-smartphones. They just
Pre
didn't have it on
normalization. Yeah.
them. Yeah, and it's really funny because later on in the chapter, they get the yellow pages. They get the
Yep.
mythical equivalent of the yellow pages, and I'm pretty sure my note was just, "Oh, 2005."
Yep. You know what? It's fun. I'll give it that one. I
It
like
is
to be
fun.
reminded of at this point, it honestly feels a little bit like a period piece. Just don't try to plot the Percy Jackson timeline on an actual timeline. You get very
And you know
confused very
what?
quickly.
I think we as a society lost something in our stories when we all got equal access to all of mankind's information in the palm of our hand, always nonstop. I feel like
Speaking,
a lot of intrigue just kind of gets thrown out the window when you can just look stuff up.
you're so right. Speaking of constant telecommunication, isn't it weird that every single time we see a TV, they're always talking about Percy or Gabe?
Yes. Well, so I was thinking about that too, because I'm like, if this were today, there is no way that everybody would be talking about this,
Not
right?
a
Which
chance.
I feel like is more of a sad indictment of our current world. But
Situation.
that aside, it is, again, it's 2005. Like, when was Balloon Boy? You remember Balloon Boy, Connor?
I do not remember Balloon Boy.
Okay, so this was, I feel like it was mid 2000s, maybe late 2000s. And it was this story that like gripped the nation for a solid week and a half, 2 weeks of these parents had this massive, it almost looked like a flying saucer, but it was like this big balloon, this like helium balloon. And they said that their son had climbed inside of it and like unhitched it and started flying away. And so there was this balloon boy. Where is balloon boy? Is he safe? As this kid was trapped in the balloon and like flying across the countryside or something. Come to find out, they were lying. The kid was locked in a closet and they were doing it
Oh
all for clout.
no.
But this was one of those stories that, like, again, maybe it's just because my parents were talking about it. It like gripped the nation for a solid few weeks, and I felt like everybody was talking about Balloon Boy. This is just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I guess if there was some kid from New York that was going on a terrorist rampage across the country, maybe that would get everybody's attention for a while. I don't know.
Yeah, the thing that just got me is you have to remember, they're still talking about the first event. Now, granted, at this point, they're talking about how he was spotted at a Colorado diner with Ares, but the original event, the original Sally going missing, was all the way before Percy got to Camp Half-Blood. That's like 2 weeks ago. This is all you guys have been talking about on the news, such that every time Percy sees a TV for 2 weeks, they're talking about him on the news? What the hell else was happening in 2005? Do you guys have nothing else to talk about? Do we just live in such a dystopia in 2025?
Let's think. 2005, Bush is president, so there's that.
Yeah, so I guess there's the war on terror. No
I
one
was
wanted
gonna
to no
say
one
there's
wanted to
there's the
report
war on
on the war on
terror.
terror.
What else? I don't know. There's the Super Bowl that happens every year. Avatar: The Last Airbender premieres on Nickelodeon. That's
Oh, there
cool.
you go.
And from a brief look at Wikipedia, and I'm specifically looking 2005 prior to June, not a whole lot happened.
Smart.
The movie Madagascar released in May. Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith also released in May, so there's that. That's exciting. Oh, this would have been happening as as Percy is traveling across the country. Michael Jackson is found not guilty of child molestation. So, as they're watching the news, they might have heard about that. That's exciting. King of Pop is acquitted.
Oh god.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that is to say, not a whole lot. So it would make sense that people are really focused on this random child from New York.
So, what do you guys think people were talking about in 2005? We'd like to know. Leave a comment or put it in a review so that we can see it.
Yeah, leave a comment and review, and also don't forget to follow us and share the podcast with your friends. That way we can continue to make the show as best as it can be.
With that, they do show the grainy shot of Annabeth, Grover, and Percy outside the diner with Ares. You mentioned earlier how Percy starts to contextualize his world in Greek mythological terms. And I do think another great example of that is when he says, LA wasn't like that. He's comparing it to New York. It was
Mhm.
spread out, chaotic, hard to move around. It reminded me of Ares. I thought that was cool. I
Yeah,
thought that was a really cool way to give some context for how LA is making Percy feel. It's making him feel
yeah.
tense and emotional the same way that Ares does.
Yeah, and he even says, like, for New York, it makes sense to him because there's a system in place. He understands it. LA is it's this new world. It symbolizes this new demigod frontier that he's in. But I do love how he specifically, when he said that there's a system to how things work, it immediately made me think of that John Mulaney bit where he's like, "How can you get lost in New York? It's a grid system, motherfucker." You know what I'm
That's
talking
such a
about,
good
Connor?
bit. I love that bit, yes. They walked past some gangbangers, bums, and street hawkers,
Of course.
and then they get called out to by a voice in the darkness, which, to be honest, all the things they could have run across, a couple of mortal children, probably the least scary thing that could have come out of the darkness.
Yes. Oh, this is best
So,
case scenario for him.
100%. Percy instinctively stops, realizes he's an idiot, and then says, "Okay,
Mhm.
I'll just pull out my sword." Tries to
Dude,
cut down one of the
all right.
mortals.
Yeah, let's not gloss over this, okay?
No, no, no. I was
I
gonna
have
say,
been
Jack,
Uh-huh.
you've been saying it all book.
I've been
And you know
saying.
what? Percy's first instinct when he runs into some kids that are, quote, like the kids at Yancey Academy, rich brats playing being bad boys. Instinctively, I
I'm gonna fucking
uncapped
kill you.
Riptide. I pulled out a lethal weapon and tried to kill them.
Yes! In his mind, it is a lethal weapon. This
Yep,
should have gored this child. It's
yep.
that killer instinct again,
And
man. So this is where we get the first half of the chapter is Percy asking really good questions and being really introspective and really accepting who he is and the role he plays in this gods and monsters world. And the second half of the chapter is Percy being a fucking psychopath. Because there's another moment near the very end of the chapter where he does something so insane and sadistic that I was genuinely a little shocked. We'll get to that in a minute. This is where we, I believe, learn for the first time that Celestial Bronze doesn't hurt
we were
people, right? We
told that
see it in
Celestial
action.
Bronze doesn't hurt people back at camp. This is the first time we see it in action,
We
yes.
see it though. Yeah, we see
Yep.
how it works. It just goes right through. And the kids are terrified. We don't know what they're seeing, but they're seeing something. And it
Yeah.
gives them enough time to just run away, looking for shelter, someplace to hide. They see Kirstu's Watre Bidet Alpachi, which Grover then translates to Krusty's Waterbed Palace.
Sounds like a lovely place.
Sounds great, because that's how I want my waterbeds, Krusty.
Oh, yeah. They get through the
Mhm.
doors. The kids run past, and Grover goes, I think we lost him. And then a voice boomed behind them. Lost who? They all jump. We're going to come back to that. Standing behind them was a guy who looked like a raptor in a leisure suit. He was at least 7 feet tall with absolutely no hair. He had gray, leathery skin, thick lidded eyes, and a cold, reptilian smile.
Oh, yeah, it's very now, Connor, this would be a book I don't recommend you read because you'd hate everything about it, but do you know of the book Blood Meridian?
I do not.
Okay. It's a Western, it is very dark, but there is the kind of chief antagonist of the book is this character named Judge Holden. So if anybody in the audience has read or knows about Blood Meridian and Judge Holden, it's very much giving those vibes. Just this somebody who looks kind of human, but not quite. There's just something really off. It is immediately unnerving. What I also find very funny is that Percy says that this guy's style is very out of fashion. It looks like it came out of the Lotus Casino. He's got this big 70s vibe going on. The shirt is a silk paisley unbuttoned halfway down his chest, and the lapels
Hairless
on the velvet
chest.
and his hairless chest, thank you. The lapels on his velvet jacket being super, super wide as landing strips, and he's got all these different silver chains around his neck. Now, Connor, I'm not a fashion guy. However, I do think that this is back in style now. I feel like I walk down the streets of DC, and especially in more of the younger, artsy, or hipper areas, this is just what people are wearing again. So this
I
guy was
believe you.
out of fashion for like 20 years, and then he had to wait another 20 years, and now he's back in. He was actually ahead of the curve.
Yeah, he didn't live long enough to see it, though. That's tough.
Spoilers, Connor.
I know.
This little fashion mogul, this trendsetter, this is crusty. He says with a tartar yellow smile, which is also just horrible.
Another good joke. I did mention that this chapter had quite a few of them. Percy, I resisted the urge to say, yes, you are crusty.
That was a good one. Yeah.
You got me, Rick. You made me giggle out loud again.
Yeah. And this guy recognizes, "Oh, you're hiding from those crappy kids. Yeah, sorry about that. But hey, they bring people in my store anyways. You guys looking for a waterbed?" And he was not asking. He was really more saying, "We're going to look at waterbeds now."
We're doing this now. You don't have a
Yes.
choice.
And inside of this showroom, there's just all the waterbeds. There's different kinds of wood, different patterns of sheets, queen size, king size, emperor of the universe size even. And Krusty is pointing these out. He's very proud. He says, "This is my most popular model." He pats it. He spreads his hands over the bed covered with black satin sheets. It's got built in lava lamps on the headboard, and the mattress is vibrating. So it looks like oil-flavored Jell-O, another
I
great
hated that
descriptor.
description.
It's so great. And he says, "This is the million hand massage. Come on, try it out. Dude, you can even take a nap on it. It's not like anybody's buying anything." And Percy, once again being kind of smart, is like, I'm good. Grover, however.
God damn it, Grover.
Grover says, "Million hand massage? Who sign me up?" And dives headfirst and then says, "Oh, you guys, this is cool." Now, Connor, I've said
Yep.
this before. I've said this before, but this time they didn't even try to like address it. Is Krusty, is he considered a monster? I believe he is.
I
Because,
actually was
you know,
specifically about to talk about this.
uh-huh.
He's not. So we'll get there in the myth
Mm.
notes. He's just a human bandit. He's
Well
he's just
then
a regular guy.
but then why does the celestial bronze work on him?
Oh, that's because he's a demigod. So, sorry, he's not a
Oh,
human bandit. He's a mortal bandit. There is a
I
difference,
see.
which is
But
why
he
the
should
celestial bronze.
still smell.
He should smell like demigod. He should smell
Mm.
dangerous. Grover should know that the situation is problematic. You would also think that Grover might be educated in myths of some of the biggest Greek heroes, perhaps the patron of Athens, Theseus, and know of his important 6 labors. But I guess Grover wasn't paying attention to Mr. Brunner's class either, because
Yeah.
this guy's
It,
name is quite literally mentioned.
yeah. Yeah, it is. And I'm okay with all of that because, I
He's
nod off
tired.
in class sometimes too. And he's tired and he wants to take a little nappy nap on the million hand massage. I am starting to get sick and tired of the whole smell thing not being consistent.
Yep.
It has frustrated me before. I don't know why it's specifically this chapter. I read this and I was like, "Come the fuck on. Really? Really, Grover? Why are you here? Why are you here? Maybe you are bad at your job, man. I've been fighting for you. I've been advocating for you. I've been saying that you're dope and a badass for what feels like the bulk of the book, outside of when I was outright bullying him at the beginning. But he earned his stripes again, and now he's fumbling. He's on fraud watch right now. Dude, your one job is to say that's a monster or that's a demigod or danger. And you should be smelling that. I don't care if you wanted to get on the million hand massage after this was dealt with. Hey man, that's fine.
You could have.
You could have, but you got to earn the million hand massage. All right? You can't just jump into it first thing. I'm shaking my head right now, Connor. I need that inconsistency to stop because it is starting to piss me off.
It is consistently neglected, which is so odd.
I know. It's so weird because it is of vital plot importance. In several moments, it's already been plot important.
At this point, they're on the beds, and then he looks at Annabeth. Do me a favor and try this one over here, honey. Might fit. And when she doesn't want to lie down, he just pushes her. He snaps his fingers. He says, ergo, revealing the magic word. Ropes spring from the sides of the bed. Now Annabeth and Grover are both lashed to the beds, and
Mhm.
they're going to start getting slowly stretched apart because all the beds are
Yeah,
exactly 6 feet. And Grover and Annabeth, they're too short. They need to fit.
that's right.
Krusty can't stand imperfect measurements. So, Percy, now having to think on his feet, starts looking around and he's putting things together. I like this line here. My mind was racing. I knew I couldn't take on this giant waterbed salesman alone. He would snap my neck before I ever got my sword out.
Yeah.
Your
Oh,
real
he's doing a
name's not
really good
Krusty,
job.
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're back to
He's
asking
he's
the right questions.
he's doing a good job. He's analyzing. He's like, "Yeah, your name's not Krusty. His name is Freaky, bro. He's got the beds that tie you down automatically. Freaky deaky crazy." And I do like how it's another example of Rick doing stuff with the text for comedic purposes, where he has Grover, like, his voice is stuttering because he is
Yes.
strapped to the vibrating bed. He's like, not cool at all."
That was
So
really
good.
good.
Thank you. What Krusty is explaining is really unnerving. Like, we kind of just glossed over it, But he says, yeah, all the beds, they're exactly 6 feet, and they're too short. I can't stand imperfect measurements. So don't worry, these are stretching jobs. Maybe 3 extra inches on their spines. They might even live. Now, we're gonna find you a bed that you like, right? And this is when Percy starts going into game plan mode, and he really does think outside the box. I like that this is an instance where Percy, like you said, recognizes that he cannot strong arm this person yet. He needs to be cunning and clever in order to get some sort of upper hand here.
Yeah. And he is going to be cunning and clever. And I like that it starts with him putting together Procrustes says legally it's Procrustes. And Percy goes, the stretcher? And he remembers the myth. And this is why I took
Mhm,
issue with Grover not knowing it. It's like Percy immediately locks in. He's like, oh, you're the guy who tried to kill Theseus.
mhm.
Oh, I remember now. And so Percy's there. He knows who this guy is. He knows what his deal is. And suddenly he starts walking around. He says, these are very nice. The workmanship is great. These beds are fabulous. And now he's
Mhm.
got Krusty in his pocket. Goes around, and Annabeth is like, Percy, what are you doing? And I loved,
Aw,
don't mind her. She's impossible.
she's impossible. Women, am I
Krusty's
right,
so,
Krusty?
all my customers are never 6 feet exactly. So inconsiderate. And then they complain about the fitting. Percy then starts to, what do you do if they're longer than 6 feet? Oh, it's a simple fix. Grabs an axe. I
Mhm.
just center the subject and lop off what hangs off either side. Percy is now starting to, sensible, of
Yep.
course. I understand you, Krusty. You're a man with a plan.
As this is happening, Rick is taking mention to be like, there is a clear timer here. Annabeth is starting to turn pale. Grover is making really strange gurgling sounds like he's a strangled goose. Like, he's gotta start making a move. He's loosening up Krusty, but his friends are tied down and getting stretched out on these beds. And all right, hold on. Let's Connor, we want to cut that. Want to cut that? I can't. I don't know that I can catch a case for saying that these kids were strapped down to the beds and getting stretched out. Come on, man. I got a career. I got a career to worry about. I realized it as soon as I said it.
Yeah, man, I'll take it out. I got you.
So they're in a bad spot.
Yeah.
They're in a bad spot. And Percy's like, "All right, we got to bring this to a close." So he's trying to keep his voice light. He's glancing around at the sales tags and he sees the Valentine-shaped honeymoon special. He goes over to the fuck-o-matic, Connor.
He's really not helping your case.
I know. But this one has dynamic stabilizers to stop wave motion, which means it's made for fucking. It's the honeymoon special, Connor. This
Yep,
is what
and
Rick
Percy
put in the
says,
book.
no waves at all. Krusty says, guaranteed. No way. Way. Show me. He sat down eagerly onto the bed and patted the mattress. No waves, see? Percy snaps his fingers, says the magic word, and he's got him.
Mhm.
Perfect. Perfect setup, perfect execution. Well done, Percy.
Yeah, speaking of perfect execution. So, remember when I said that Percy was a fucking psychopath? Yeah, this is that other time in the chapter. So, he's got Krusty right where he wants him, and Percy's now, like, reveling in this. He's really
Dialoguing.
taking pleasure in this. He says,
Yeah.
"Yeah, center him just right." And the ropes readjust themselves at his command. Krusty's whole head now stuck out the top. His feet are sticking out the bottom. And Krusty's now saying, "No, wait! This was just a demo!" And Percy uncaps Riptide. Percy looks at him and says, "A few simple adjustments." And his internal monologue, the stuff that only we are privy to, he says, "I had no qualms about what I was about to do.
Yep.
If Krusty were
I'm
human, I
cool.
couldn't hurt him anyway. And if he was a monster, he deserved to turn into dust for a while." Krusty is still pleading. He says, "You drive a hard bargain." I'll give you 30% off all selected floor models. And Percy
Not exactly
still
great bargaining for his life.
not great. Yeah, how much is it worth? And Percy's just again really drawing this out. Says, I think I'll start with the top. He raises his sword. Krusty says, no money down, no interest for 6 months. It just says Percy. He swings the sword. Krusty stopped making offers, which is insanely hard. But also, what the fuck, Percy? What the actual fuck was that?
It's so cold. I love it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, let's keep in mind, all right? Rick has made point of saying, oh, yep, his friends are getting torn apart, and he's taking this time to, like, mentally torture and play with his victim before freeing his friends.
Yep.
Dude, that's a whole other 7 layers of fucked.
But, the good news is Annabeth and Grover, they do make it out of this.
They
If
do.
perhaps a little taller, as Percy jests. Annabeth
Mm.
does not find that funny, unsurprisingly. And then they go behind Krusty's sales desk to find the all-new compendium of LA area monsters. The only monstrous yellow pages you'll ever need.
Mhm.
Hello, 2005.
Hello. How quaint.
And with that, Percy says it's only a block from here as he's found the underworld.
Woo!
All right, Jack, before we give our thoughts, because I know you are just so incredibly eager to talk about this chapter, I believe I mentioned that we have a special announcement for everyone.
We sure do. We're trying to get to 100 followers. And if we do, as a special treat, we are going to watch the Percy Jackson movie to celebrate not only reaching that milestone, but also celebrate our upcoming completion of book 1.
I was about to say I'm excited. I don't know if I'm excited, but I do think it is about time that we find out if this movie is as painful as we remember it being. So if you want to see that, make sure you're following us on all of your favorite podcast platforms and share our show with your friends so that we hit our goal.
You heard them. We are going to punish ourselves as a form of celebration for you. But that's enough of the announcement. Why don't you get back to telling me what you're thinking about this chapter?
I thought that was fun. Procrustes is very much one of those encounters that feels like Rick was looking for a cool mythological something to toss in here. And Procrustes in the actual mythology lives near one of the gates of the underworld because that's Theseus's whole thing as he goes past 6 gates of the underworld. So it makes sense to put the final challenge that Theseus passed by one of these gates as Percy's final challenge before he gets to the underworld.
Yeah.
The ocean stuff is top tier. I love the
Yeah.
Santa Monica Beach stuff. That's really, really good. Right up until the Nereid starts not answering literally a single fucking question.
Yeah, if I didn't make it clear, I struggle with this chapter. There are some really awesome moments in it. I agree. I think the stuff on the beach and when Percy is just with his own devices is really good. That's another, I would say, honestly, top character moment for me in this story so far.
Yeah.
But the chapter itself is so scattered and just feels kind of sloppy. And once again, there's just so many problems of things not adhering to the rules of the world and characters kind of acting out of sorts. This is one where it just felt like the plot was moving the characters along as opposed to the characters moving the plot along. They just felt out of sorts. It felt weird. I also think that this is one of those chapters where if you're doing a reread, you could probably just skip the entire second half. Sure, Krusty's thing was cool, I guess. I'm going to be so honest. I forgot that this entire encounter existed coming back to this book, and I totally get why.
I think
Yeah.
that's entirely fair.
I think that my thoughts from last chapter remain here, which is I'm tired of the preamble. I'm tired of the foreplay. Let's get to the underworld now. Let's
Well,
do it. There's nothing else here that we need to do, and this goes double for this entire chapter.
There is one more thing here that we need to do, and that's sit down on our favorite of these delightful waterbed mattresses. Give it a good test.
Mm-hmm.
Check out the wave motion and go over some myths.
I'm getting a massage. This is great. Grover was right.
So, we're going to start with some epithets of Hades. They're trying to figure out who Percy saw in the dream sequence from last chapter, and he's struggling to remember the crooked one, which they use as an epithet for Kronos, who is trapped in Tartarus. Annabeth tosses out a couple of epithets of Hades. So I thought, let's go dig into those. The silent one and the rich one. We're going to start with the silent one, because to the best of my understanding, granted, as stated before, not a historian, just an independent individual who's passionate about this doing research. But where I was looking, it does not seem to be an epithet that I could find documented anywhere as having been used in ancient Greece. We do have some references to silence being tied to the underworld that I think is where Rick might get this from. So in Ovid's Metamorphoses, he has a retelling of the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. And in this, he mentions, now by these regions filled with fear, by this huge chaos, these vast, silent realms reweave. I implore the fate unwound to fast of my Eurydice. The vast, silent realms being Hades, the underworld. Then, from a little later in the 1st century CE, we have a Roman poet who writes this line in reference to Hades: "Let him come and approach the awful throne of the silent monarch, and pay his last due of gratitude, and anxiously request for his son a long life." So, we refer to Hades as the silent monarch. Again, we're getting close, but it's certainly not the silent one. And that's really it. Outside of that, there are a couple of other instances where silence is associated with the underworld on the whole. But my guess is that silence is more associated with the concept of death and the underworld than it is necessarily Hades. But then there's
Make
the
this
rich
to
one.
me? Yeah.
The rich one, this shit gets used all the time. So,
Mhm.
super easy to trace. We have a whole bunch of references to it. And in fact, if I say Pluto, you probably think the Latinization of Hades' name being Pluto, the Roman god.
Correct.
Well, that does not come from Hades. That actually comes from the Greek word Plutos, meaning wealth. And the Greeks actually worshipped Hades under a different aspect, Pluton. Pluton being and derived from Plutos, of wealth, later Latinized to Pluto for the Roman version of the god that we would think of today as his Roman name. So we can actually then look and start to track the different instances of the name's usage in Greek history and from Greek geographers. For the sake of brevity, I've selected one that I thought kind of really exemplified the name's usage in worship. So Strabo was a Greek geographer from around the beginning of the 1st century. He wrote about a town called Akaraha in Korea. And there
Could I
he
get
wrote,
that one more time, Connor? What was the name of
oh,
that
of
town?
course, the town is Akaraha? Karaye? I have no idea. And he writes, on the road between the Trallians and Nysa is a village of the Nisaeans, not far from the city of Akaraha, where is the Plutonion, with a costly sacred precinct and a shrine of Pluton and Kore, Kore being another name for Persephone. In that entry, he is specifically referencing a temple to Pluton called a Plutonian, built by the Greek people of the region. There is another quote from the same book that talks about the town of Cumae or Kyme, where he talks about an old temple that, quote, people used to suppose that this too was a Plutonian place, and that the Chimeroi had actually been there, the Kimmeroi being the local people he was writing about. So now we've at least got a very solid basis. Hades just had a separate name that was Pluton, and it did come from the word meaning wealth. So that raises then a few different questions. Why did the name change? Where does it come from? How do we know they're the same person? For the sake of dramatic effect, I shall tell you that the answers to these questions can be found in the history surrounding something known as the Eleusinian Mysteries.
Ooh.
Thank you. The Eleusinian Mysteries are cult initiation rituals where the mystery was actually the activities and rituals of the cult, because you didn't get to know unless you were in the cult. Or you're, in our case, reading about it thousands of years later because everyone in the cult is dead. So, not such a mystery anymore, huh?
Right. Very good point.
But the Eleusinian Mysteries, they were likely the thing that popularized and spread the name Pluton. They were annual initiations of the cult of Demeter and Persephone. So, being that they involved Demeter and Persephone, they did have a strong link to the underworld, and specifically, the mysteries were meant to depict the cycle of Demeter searching for Persephone and Persephone's journey into the underworld and then rising again, her Katabasis, which we'll talk about later. The origin of the practices are actually super old, and we can trace them all the way back to an agrarian cult during the Bronze Age, roughly between 1200 and 800 BC in the Attica region. And even then, we actually don't think that the practice started there. That's just where the archaeological record gives us solid evidence that these practices were happening. But we can even then assume and draw on other archaeological records to derive that these practices may have even come from the Mycenaean period before that. And these are just the natural progression of these cult initiation rituals over time. As such, like I mentioned, the mysteries are linked to the story of the abduction of Persephone, hence the link to Hades and Pluton. Which brings us to the actual Hades-Pluton situation. So, the name Pluton first appears in literature during the classical period of ancient Greece, which is around the 5th and 4th centuries BC, and gained its popularity as the Eleusinian Mysteries became more popular and as more people joined the cult and experienced the mysteries. Those myths can specifically help us link Pluton and Hades as the same person because they also reference how Pluton drew lots to become ruler of the underworld. The exact same myths that we have under the name Hades, where it's Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, they drew lots, and that's how they decided what they got. Hades was then definitely the earlier name to have been used. It seems to have been firstly used to mean both Hades the god and Hades the place, meaning the underworld. But as people needed to define things more, and they were talking about Pluton as this other deity through the Eleusinian Mysteries, it slowly became more common that Hades was just the name of the underworld, and Pluton was the name of the actual deity. What's more fun, though, is as that shifted, the actual character of Hades shifted. So Pluton, being associated with the mysteries, was much more associated with Persephone as a loving husband, not as an abductor. So Pluton, being this god of wealth, that wealth also represented the wealth of the earth. Demeter and Persephone making this festival all about, again, the cycles of growth and abundance. So god of wealth makes sense. Hades was portrayed as a truly violent character. This was the devil. You didn't want to see him. He was going to torture you and throw you in the underworld with all the other damned. He abducted Persephone. Pluton just married her. Good husband, strict ruler of the underworld, but definitely had a much more positive outlook on the underworld and death and the afterlife for the people that saw Pluton instead of Hades. Kind of fun. That's what I've got on Epithets of Hades.
Yeah, that's dope.
I didn't expect there to be that much information on these, and in fairness, with the silent one, there wasn't. But with the rich one, there really was. So that brings us then to either the Labors of Theseus or Katabasis's On the Whole. Which one would you like to do next?
Oh my god. I get to choose? I have a choice now?
You have a choice.
This is also unprecedented. This is crazy. We're going off the rails here, Connor.
It's because neither of these, well, Procrustes is mentioned specifically at the end of the chapter, but Katabasis is never directly mentioned, so it can really go anywhere.
How about Nereids, Connor?
Fuck! No! I don't want to talk about them. It's my show, damn it. I make the myths.
Whoa, take it easy, man. Sorry, it's just, it's like the third time they've showed up in the book and you haven't mentioned them. It's just, I was wondering,
You shut your mouth. There are no Nereids in this book. Okay? And anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is selling something.
Fuck. All right, well, let's talk about Theseus then, man. Jeez.
I'm so glad you asked. Let's talk about the Labors of Theseus.
I can't wait.
So, we're going to talk about the 6 Labors of Theseus with an intentional tangent specifically on Procrustes. The best and most clear primary source I could find for this was from the turn of the first millennia in 8 AD, Book 7 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. So at the end, I'll read the excerpt of that to summarize the story. But for now, let's go over the big details and use some evidence from other sources that helps flush things out. Our story begins with King Aegeus, a sort of pre-king of Athens. And if this sounds familiar, that's because I've already briefly touched on this part of the story in episode 4, where we talked about the Minotaur, which is Theseus's other big deed. He slayed the Minotaur, but it's not one of his 6 labors. So our story begins with King Aegeus. He has no children and wants an heir. And so in the rare occasion where I think it's a bit overkill, to be honest, he says, all right, I'm seeking out the oracle at Delphi. I gotta know. So he does. And on his way there, he realizes he's going to need a place to stay. So he hits up his friend Pythias, king of Trozen, and he stays at this guy's palace. He goes to the oracle, and she tells him a prophecy, and he goes, I don't get it at all. However, Pythias, he's like, no. I got you, man. I totally understood the prophecy. He gets Aegeus really drunk and quite literally gives him his daughter. That's it. He says, you need an heir? Here's some wine and a lady. And it is awful, but it is also ancient times and myths, and that doesn't make it better. So this princess, the daughter of King Pythias, her name is Aethra. And while Aegeus is asleep, Aethra follows the instructions given to her by Athena in a dream. It's unclear if Aethra and Aegeus slept together this night while he was drunk or at a later time, because it's not really stated. It's just stated that he only leaves after she becomes pregnant. She's not there yet. So she wades across the water to the nearby island of Sphyra, where she pours an offering to the Sphyros, the name of the godly namesake for the island, as well as Poseidon. She was then subsequently possessed, heavy quotes, by the sea god. That is the terminology used that I could find. But possessed apparently means that Theseus gets to have a combined divine and mortal parentage, where this guy has one mom and 2 dads. So his mother is Aethra, and his dads are both Aegeus and Poseidon. So that's a thing, I guess. I think it's a little bit weird even for Greek mythology, if you ask me.
Yeah, a lot happening there.
It's probably because, genuinely, the people and government of Athens needed their best boy founder hero to be of royal lineage and godly lineage to make sure that his claim to the throne was uber super legit.
They're covering all the angles.
Quite specifically. They're Athens. They had to be the best in
Makes
everything.
sense.
So, before Aegeus left, he buries his sandals under a huge rock with his sword and tells Aethra that if their son was heroic enough, he would be able to move the rock and take the items as evidence of his royal lineage. Skip a few years, and what do you know? Theseus moves the rock, and his mother explains who his dad is, and that he has to take the sandals and sword back to Athens.
The British have a sword in the stone. And the Greeks have sandals under the big ass rock.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yep.
Cool.
Which then brings us to the sixth labors. Because Theseus, he actually had two options to get to Athens from where he was raised in Trozen. By sea, which is, by all accounts, the super safe, well-traveled, fast way, or by land, which follows a dangerous path all the way around the Saronic Gulf. He has to go on foot, where he is going to walk past 6 different entrances to the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
So he clearly chooses to go by land.
Yes, of course. Because
Again,
he's that guy.
to remind you that this is a huge cultural hero of Athens, the entrances that he is going to walk past to the underworld are all very sacred places that are local to the land around Athens. So this is basically the original Athenian road trip story. Don't read too far into that.
Hmm.
So it starts with his first labor, Periphetes the club bearer. He runs into Periphetes in a city called Epidaurus. It's a small city sacred to Apollo and Asclepius, and Periphetes is, as I mentioned, known as the club bearer because he beats his opponents into the earth with his club. So
Oh, hell yeah.
Theseus beats him by stealing the club and beating Periphetes into the earth with it.
That is fucking awesome. Okay. So it's not the guy who was doing that. Maybe it's the club. Maybe that club is like a magic item. The
You
club
know
of
what?
beating.
He actually does take that club and keep it. So
I might be
it's
onto
like
something.
his big magic item that he's seen with in all his things is this club from Periphetes. So you
This
might be
big
right.
ass caveman club. God, what a brute.
So then he gets to his second labor, where he comes across a man named Sinus, also known as Pitiocampes, which translates to he who bends pine trees. This one is by the Isthmian entrance to the underworld, and Sinus is actually a son of Procrustes. I told you this was about Procrustes, don't question it.
I see. Okay.
So
All
Sinus,
coming together.
his method of slaying people, as you might have guessed by his title Pitiocampes, he who bends pine trees, is that he would capture people, tie them between 2 pine trees that were bent down to the ground, and then let the trees go, tearing the victims to pieces.
Oh, hell yeah. That's awesome.
So Theseus slays him by his own method by beating him with the club, tying him to the trees, and ripping him apart. He then proceeds to seduce Sinus's daughter, Perigune, fathering a child. I'm going to leave, again, heavy air quotes on the word seduced for that one.
Mhm.
But again, the stories say seduced. Accuracy be damned, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
The third labor is the Crommyonian sow, unsurprisingly, in Cromyon. The Crommyonian sow is a giant pig bred by an old woman named Faye, or Fia. Some versions, the sow herself is named Fia, but most modern scholars think that that was probably people just getting the story wrong and assuming that the old lady's name was also the name of the pig because humans are dumb. And Theseus just kills the pig by hitting it with the club. That's it.
there's there's something so not heroic about a guy just brandishing this big ass club and bludgeoning stuff with it. It's so
Isn't
funny.
Theseus great?
This guy's awesome. This might be my favorite hero. This guy's awesome.
You say that about every hero.
I know. They just keep getting better.
So Theseus then goes to his fourth labor, where he is going to encounter the bandit Skyron. He is on the coast near Megara, and what he does, and we'll get to see this guy in the House of Hades when the crew of the Argo 2 comes across him. What he did is he would force travelers to kneel down on the edge of a cliff and wash his feet. He would brandish a sword at them, threaten them, your life or my feet being washed. He apparently had notoriously nasty feet, and when they knelt down to wash his feet, he would kick them off and they would be eaten by a giant turtle. or sometimes just a
Okay.
generic sea monster, but it's way more fun if it's giant turtle, so I'm sticking with giant turtle.
Mm-hmm.
So I bet you're wondering, how does Theseus kill this guy?
Does he beat him with a club and then kick him into the turtle's mouth?
He beats him with a club and pushes him off the cliff into a turtle's mouth. You're so
You gotta
smart.
love the classics. If it works, it works.
Then we come across Labor 5, Kerkion. This one takes place at the holy site of Eleusis, where those Eleusinian mysteries are from
I
that
was
we
gonna
just talked
say
about.
the mystery place.
Mm-hmm. And there, the king at Eleusis is Kerkion. And he is a cruel and unjust king, apparently. And he challenges passerbys to wrestling matches and kills them after he wins. So he says, "You there, traveler?" And he points at Theseus and he challenges him to a wrestling match. And Theseus sets down the club this time, wrestles him, and kills him.
Oh, okay. All
That's
right.
it.
Way to mix things up.
Yep. And then finally, last and maybe least, honestly, Procrustes the Stretcher. The whole reason we're talking about this myth to begin with. Somewhere on the plains of Eleusis, after he has come across Kerkion and seen the holy site, he comes across a stronghold on Mount Korydallos by the river. Procrustes has a few other names that he goes by: Procoptes, or Damastes, meaning subduer, or Polypemon, which sounds like a Pokemon I'd rather not see. And Procrustes' whole thing is he invites every single person who passes by to spend the night. And then he would use his smith's hammer to stretch that unlucky traveler to fit in the one guest bed he had. Because he only had the one guest bed. He said, "You have to
Wait,
stay here."
hold on. How was he using the hammer to stretch these people out?
I'm so glad you asked. He lays them on the bed, and in the middle of the night, he smacks them with the hammer until they're stretched to fit in the bed.
That's not stretching. That's bludgeoning and crushing. That's smushing. That's smushing, and that's a very different thing.
Hey, man, I don't make the myths. I'm just telling you, he used the hammer and stretched the traveler.
Well, then he's not the stretcher, he's the smusher, or the smasher, perhaps.
He's the hits you with a hammer until you're dead guy.
His entire shtick is a misnomer.
Well, we actually do have some interesting changes to the story about Procrustes. Funny enough, later people started to question, wait, if there's only one bed, what happens if you're too tall for the bed? Then he doesn't have to stretch you. So that's when we start getting the version where if the guest was too tall, he would cut off the excess length. And then after that, people were like, well, what if you fit perfectly in the bed? So that's when in later versions, he starts to have two beds so that he can take you to the guest room where you're guaranteed not to fit in the bed. That
Well,
way
then
you
what's the
always
point?
don't fit. And he
Then what's
always
the
gets to
point,
kill you.
Connor? I was gonna say, this guy just wants people to die. There's no rhyme or reason. That's a thin veneer of rationale, okay? I'm frustrated. This might be my least favorite guy you've told me about.
Right? And so unsurprisingly, Theseus kills him by putting him in his own bed, by overpowering him, and then smacking him until he stretches to fit the bed.
Uh-huh. Yes, with his club. Yes,
With
yes.
his club. You get it.
I do get it.
A fun little detail, by the way. Did you know that a Procrustean bed has become a term that means an arbitrary standard to which exact conformity is forced? It's not used a lot anymore, but like Edgar Allan Poe used it one time. And
I was not aware of that. No.
so, like, a modern example, though, would be standardized tests are a Procrustean bed. It's
Oh.
kind of neat. I think it should be
Okay.
used again
Yeah.
because it's actually useful for describing how fucked up a situation can be. It's
Yeah.
anything that's a one size fits all solution that doesn't actually work.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
And then it's a Procrustean bed. So I did mention that I had an excerpt from Ovid, and after all of the stupidity of he hit him with club, he hit him
Mhm.
with club, and he hit
Yes.
him with club,
Yes.
I figure I might at least regale you with some genuine pretty poetry. So, Ovid writes, recoiling from such utter wickedness, rejoicing that his son escaped from death, the grateful father kindled altar fires and gave rich treasure to the living gods. He slaughtered scores of oxen decked with flowers and gilded horns. The sun has never shone upon a day more famous in that land, for all the elders and all the common folk united in festivities, with wine inspiring wit and song. "O you," they sang, "immortal Theseus, victory was yours. Did you not slaughter the huge bull of Crete? Yes, did you slay the boar of Crommyon, where now the peasant unmolested plows? And Periphetes, wielder of the club, was worsted when he struggled with your strength, and fierce Procrustes, matched with you beside the rapid river, met his death. And even Cercyon, in Eleusis, lost his wicked life inferior to your might. And Sinus, a monstrosity of strength, who bent the trunks of trees and used his might against the world for everything that's wrong. For evil he would force down to the earth, pine tops to shoot men's bodies through the air. Even the road to Megara is safe, for you did hurl the robber Skyron sheer over the cliff. Both land and sea denied his bones a resting place, as tossed about they changed into the cliffs that bear his name. How can we tell you the number of your deeds? Deeds glorious that now exceed your years. For you, brave hero, we give public thanks and prayers. To you we drain our cups of wine. And all the palace rings with happy songs and with grateful prayers of all the people. And sorrow in that city is not known. They really loved this guy.
Yeah, and that's all well and good, but it could have used some more hitting people over the head with a club until they died. But that's just me. That's just me. What can I say? What can I say? I'm easy to please.
Which, by the way, I did forget to mention. Procrustes is a child of Poseidon. There are a couple of sources for it, but I like this one that shows the evolution of the story as well. It's from the 2nd century AD, and it says, Theseus killed Procrustes, son of Neptunus. When a guest came to visit him, if he was rather tall, he brought a shorter bed and cut off the rest of his body. If rather short, he gave him a longer bed, and by hanging anvils to him, stretch him to match the length of the bed. It's not always a hammer, but the anvils are still there, implying hammer.
So he's a smusher. He's a smusher and a squasher and a smasher.
And that is Procrustes, or more accurately, the 6 Labors of Theseus.
What a guy.
Yep. So now we're going to get to the big ticket item. And I'm glad we saved Katabasis for last. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should have forced you to do this one last, but I'm glad I gave you choice and you made the right choice.
I was going to say, this might have been the illusion of choice. If I chose the other one first, you might have said, actually, we're not going to do that. So
The good news is you made the right choice. So let's talk about
I did.
Katabasis. What is a katabasis? You might have heard this before, but a katabasis is any story where the character goes down to the underworld. Specifically, the roots for the word are kata, meaning down, and basis, or basis, being derived from the ancient Greek word beina, horrible pronunciation, meaning down. So the word means literally go down. That's it.
How
Go
straightforward.
down into the underworld. The concept is, because of the Greek roots of the word, heavily linked to Greek mythology. But what's really cool is that Katabasis is not a Greek phenomenon. In fact, Katabasis stories are a real staple across not just many mythologies, but even some modern stories. So, as we've said, a Katabasis at its core is any story that is a journey to the land of the dead, and usually, but not always, mythological or religious in nature. Other features of a katabasis are that the hero or protagonist of the journey is notably not dead, otherwise it wouldn't be the same. There's also the tail end of the story, which is the anabasis, the coming up part of the story, the going up from the underworld, which is, again, almost always a part of a katabasis, because if you go into the underworld, you have to come back up. And lastly, you try not to go to the underworld for fun. So most Katabasis stories feature a very clear reason for going to the underworld. And it can be any number of things, but some of the most frequent are, for example, the rescue of a loved one, see Orpheus or Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. An important object or MacGuffin, such as Heracles, the time when he captures Cerberus, or perhaps Interstellar, or secret knowledge that only the dead possess, such as Book 11 of the Odyssey, where Odysseus is seeking information that the witch Circe has told him he can get by speaking to the dead prophet Tiresias, or Star Wars Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. I've stretched the definition a little bit, but I'll get to those later. So, we had a couple of specific Katabasis mentioned in this chapter. The first of which is Heracles. There are some minor discrepancies among sources as to the actual timeline of events, but again, this one is pretty straightforward. Heracles is super duper popular. The story basically starts, Hercules is born, Hera is trying to ruin Heracles' life, and once upon a time, Heracles married a princess named Megara. Yes, the same name as the shore from earlier, they're different, just work with it. They're happily married for a few years, and they have some kids. And because Heracles is happy, Hera cannot abide, so she strikes Heracles with a fit of madness, during which he kills Megara and their children. And that's what leads to the 12 Labors of Hercules.
Mm-hmm.
Recovering from his madness, Heracles seeks to atone for his actions, so he seeks out an oracle, specifically the Oracle of Delphi, and the oracle says, you should repent by going to serve your cousin, and just do whatever he says for 12 years. So he goes to Tiryns to serve his cousin, King Eurystheus, for 12 years, and if he does this, he's told by the oracle that he will be rewarded with immortality. And of course, Heracles actually proceeds to cry about it, because his cousin isn't a nice guy, he doesn't like him, and he thinks he's a wuss. These are like his actual...
Come on!
Yes.
Please don't make me deal with this guy.
But he does it anyway, because he doesn't want to piss off the gods, which, fair. And so the 12 labors start. And we're just going to skip labors 1 through 11, I'm sure we'll talk about them at another time, to get to the Katabasis labor, because that's what we're really here for. So the only important context we're really missing from the first 11 labors is that they all sucked, and they were supposed to kill Heracles or be impossible or both. And yet Heracles succeeds at every single one, because he's Heracles. Which brings us to labor number 12, which is, fuck you, go to the underworld, get Cerberus, and bring him back here. Maybe that'll kill you, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, they're pulling all stops.
So, Heracles, preparing for the journey to the underworld, goes to Eleusis to be initiated in the Eleusinian mysteries. It all ties together.
I was going to say, with a bow, Connor.
Having
with a bow, it's tied together.
Initiated into the cult, and now having a better understanding of the underworld and what lies ahead of him, he sets out for the underworld. And this is where he meets Theseus and Pirithous. I found out his name. That's Theseus' friend who wants to abduct Persephone. Note that this is where he goes down and frees only Theseus. If you want to learn more about that, check out episode 4. Heracles eventually makes his way to the palace of Hades, walks up to the king of the dead, and says, hey, can I borrow Cerberus for a day? And Hades says, sure you can. There's just one thing. You have to subdue him without using any weapons, because he is my dog and I love him. And Hades is thinking, there's no chance that this guy is going to do this and succeed. But he's Heracles, so of course he succeeds. He gets Cerberus. He exits the underworld, goes back to Eurystheus, who quite literally begs Heracles to take Cerberus back to the underworld and says that he won't make him do any more labors so long as he gets the giant death dog out of his palace.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is the end of one of Heracles' Katabasis. But this one's more fun, and we're going to be talking about Cerberus anyway. So, that brings us to the next one, because surprisingly, I couldn't find any information on that time that Houdini went to Tartarus.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation on that one, but nothing actually solid.
So now we're going to talk about Orpheus. And again, we have a lot of myth to get through already, still just in this section alone. and still more to go, so I'm not going to be taking the time to cite where the stories come from. This is going to be a short summary of the Katabasis only. If you do want to learn more about Orpheus or any myth, let us
Read a
know.
book.
Leave
Oh,
a
that
comment
too.
or a review, and maybe your idea will get turned into a future episode.
Do what Connor says. That actually makes a lot more sense.
So, there's actually a lot less additional context we need here. Firstly, because you probably already know the story of Orpheus. Secondly, because it's an incredibly straightforward story when you're just looking at the Katabasis and the face value of that. So Orpheus, the man who went to Hades to bring back his dead wife Eurydice. What you might not have known is she was killed at their wedding. And even worse, it's a skill issue. You see, she was walking in the tall grass without a Pokemon, rookie mistake, and she got bit by an Ekans and died.
She done got bit by a copperhead? Really?
Done got bit by a copperhead!
That's crazy.
Okay, but more seriously, because this actually is like a proper tragedy and a really sad story. So Eurydice, on the day of her wedding, was walking in tall grass, and a satyr, in some versions, tried to force himself upon her. In other versions, she's just dancing with some naiads, but either way, she falls into a nest of venomous snakes. In the versions where the satyr was trying to rape her, she is literally running away from the satyr, not watching where she's going in the tall grass, falls into the nest of venomous snakes, one bites her and kills her. Orpheus then finds her body, and in grief, he plays such sad music that, quote, he made all the nymphs and gods weep for his loss. So they tell him, go to the underworld and get your love back because your music is so fucking sad it is bringing the mood down of the entire world. And what's most tragic is it almost worked. He goes down into the palace of Hades and Persephone just as Heracles did, and he plays his music for them, and it's moving enough that it convinces even Hades and Persephone that Eurydice should be allowed to return with Orpheus, on one condition. I know you've all heard the story before. It is that he must walk in front of her, and he can't look back at her until they've both reached the surface once more. Unfortunately, the tale of Orpheus is a sad one. He reaches the surface, and in his joy, he turns back to look at Eurydice, who has not yet crossed the threshold. Only he had. So with that, she vanishes, this time lost forever. This is, of course, just one version. Oh, go ahead.
I was about to say, I'm sure there were other versions, right? Because the one that I knew was tragic in perhaps a different way, which is he just couldn't bear to not know if she was behind him or not, if he had been tricked, and stole a glance right as he was at the threshold. Didn't even leave yet, and saw that she was there the whole time, only to get whisked away.
Yeah. So you were absolutely correct. This is just one version and interpretation. And even ancient people were actually debating the true meaning of this Katabasis story. And while I won't give every version its time of day, I'm going to bring up a dissenting opinion from Plato. So Plato argued that Orpheus was actually a weak man who didn't truly love Eurydice for not fully committing to being with her and joining her in death instead of going to try and take her from the underworld back to the land of the living.
Damn.
So I guess Plato would have been a fan of Romeo and Juliet.
Plato said, dude, you gotta kill yourself. That's the only way that I'll respect you.
But what's really interesting about that take and the version that you gave as well is the story actually seems to shift over time from being a true and honest love story about a man doing his best, but it results in a tragic end anyway, to a slow progression to Orpheus was never meant to make it out. And Persephone and Hades always knew he was going to fail and were just toying with him because they too saw him as this weak individual who wasn't doing enough on Earth, basically. I think it's an interesting look at what the Katabasis can mean and how it shifts over time, because to some it is a story of hope. Think Percy Jackson going to take back his mother. It is proving that the impossible can be done. And to others, it is the foolish errand of someone who can't move on from the past.
Mhm.
It's two
What
very
hubris.
different, yes, it's two very different interpretations. So let's talk some other Katabasis stories, just to establish how prevalent these are. In Greek mythology alone, there is Odysseus's Book 11 of the Odyssey, where he performs a ritual to summon spirits of the dead so he can speak with the prophet Tiresias. Funny enough, this one is actually debated as to whether or not it's actually a Katabasis, even though it's frequently used as one of the most important examples of a Katabasis, because Odysseus never actually goes to Hades, to the underworld. They just sail by one of the entrances to the underworld. They stop at a beach, and in this place where the border between the underworld and the land of the living is most fuzzy, basically, they are able to perform the ritual to summon the dead and speak with them. However, our good friend Theseus and his best friend Perithous try to abduct Persephone. They fail, and only Theseus is rescued by Heracles. In Virgil's Aeneid, Aeneas speaks to his father in a Katabasis story. Heracles again. This time he rescues someone by the name of Alcestis from Hades. Juno, queen of the gods, has a Katabasis in Ovid's Metamorphoses. Dionysus rescues Semele from Hades. And then, there's even more. There's Psyche, Pelops, and Persephone. And that's just Greek mythology. If we start going into other mythologies, Mesopotamian mythology has Enkidu, which is from Gilgamesh, and specifically the part of the Epic of Gilgamesh, Enkidu in the Netherworld. In Christianity, there's Peter in the Apocalypse of Peter, or Thomas in the Apocalypse of Thomas,
Yeah.
or Paul in the Apocalypse of Paul.
Yeah. There's a
A
couple
lot
of
of
those.
apocalypses. One I know you know about this guy, Dante, protagonist of his own poem in the Divine
the
Comedy.
fanfic. Yes.
Yeah. Also a Katabasis. In Islam, you have the Prophet Muhammad. In Norse religion, you have Odin, Balder, Hermodr, Elrid Brynhildr. There are so many. And here's where we get to some really fun ones. So, Jack, we've really broken from mythology, and I just thought I would show off how much Katabasis media there really is. This is a core part of human experience because we want to know what death is, what happens beyond it. And so we tell story after story that rationalizes it, especially because I mentioned the Katabasis can be a story of hope. So in modern media, I'm going to bring up Dante's Inferno again, because compared to the other ones we've been talking about, it's pretty modern.
Mhm.
In Percy Jackson, there's the Lightning Thief. There's the Throne of Fire from the Kane Chronicles. There is apparently a book called Katabasis coming out in 2025, which is apparently a highly anticipated novel by the author R.F. Kuang and is big on book talk. This is a sequel to her popular novel Babel. Thank you, Sam, at Shakespearean Sam on Instagram, link in the description. That's my wife's bookstagram. She informed me of all of this because researching this was made really annoying by the fact that I couldn't Google Katabasis without this fucking book coming up 12 different fucking times.
Ugh.
Sam also informed me that another popular book talk book, The Games Gods Play, is a Katabasis. But then I've got some weird ones. Coco, the Pixar film, absolutely a Katabasis. Tron Legacy?
Mhm.
Can I argue that Tron Legacy is a Katabasis? He's going into an underworld motif into the computer where everyone is dead to try and find a loved one, his dad. Sounds like a Katabasis to me. If we expand our definition even a little bit further, I think Dagobah from Empire Strikes Back that I mentioned earlier functions as a Katabasis. Yoda kind of represents an old dead way of life. Luke specifically communes with Obi-Wan on Dagobah, a dead man.
Okay.
Avatar The Last Airbender, The Siege of the North Part 2, Aang goes to the spirit world to find the ocean and moon spirits, specifically because one of them is presumably going to die, a whole bunch of people are going to die. I think that functions well as a Katabasis, especially because he interacts with something that knew his past life, in interaction with spirits that knew the dead, getting information from an other world. And finally, one that I know you will say was worth all the wait, Jack, Pokemon Platinum. When you go to the distortion world, that's a Katabasis.
Yeah, man. You're right. You are actually, that is one of the more accurate depictions that you were describing. Yeah.
So
I will
I have
throw in one. I will
please.
throw in one because it is also a piece of, at the time of recording, fairly recent media. The show Severance. The second season, I cannot get like any details without it being a crazy spoiler, but that is 1000% a Katabasis. For those of you that haven't watched Severance, it's very good. Give it a watch.
So now we've thrown at you just a million Katabasises. And just to reiterate, the reason I bring up all of these stories is because the Katabasis is an innately human story. We have told these stories for thousands of years. These stories and stories like them. Even in our own D&D group, Jack, we have told a few Katabasis stories.
That's true. Yep.
I would argue that one of the best ones is one that I unfortunately didn't get to witness. But I would say that Oscar's capture arc from our gangster campaign functions as a Katabasis.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue that Strider, the Bachelor Party one-shot, was a Katabasis, where we explored memories from our group's different D&D campaigns and revisited characters long past, the dead. We tell these stories to comfort ourselves because they mean something to us. So go read a Katabasis. You'll enjoy it, and it'll make you feel something. And hey, maybe just go read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Book 1, The Lightning Thief. Because it's a Katabasis. Just keep listening here, too. And tell your friends!
Damn. What a profound end that was, Connor. That's all well and good, but I think I need more people smashing each other over the heads with big ass fucking bludgeoning weapons like a club. Give me more of that.
What if I
Human
gave you...
experience, us trying to relate, us feeling better. That's all well and good. I want focused violence to solve problems.
I can give you a big dog and a boat guy.
I'm cool with that. I like
All
that
right.
too.
Then I will see you next week where we talk about a big dog and a boat guy.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to support our content, please be sure to leave a review, share with your friend, and follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, this has been Notes from the Oracle. Sorry for Katabasing for so long. There are just so many of them. I got excited.
No. Dude, I'm pretty sure that myth section was like 40 minutes. It's definitely, this was the most, I think, comprehensive myth breakdown we've had, which was fine. It's just, this was like, it was a lot.
Now do you see why I
It's a
cut
lot.
Nereids?
Yeah, but God fucking forbid we talk about Nereids. Can't have that. I'm
Oh
gonna
my
spend
God.
10 minutes talking about all the different Katabases within the last 100 years. But Nereids, the things that we've seen several times in the stories, no, we don't have time for that.
It's like I've been saying, man. I choose what we talk about for the myths, and I don't know what it is. Nereids just do not interest me. I cannot get excited about those sea ladies.
Damn. Well, you keep pushing it off for as long as you want, because they're gonna be there for a minute.
I'm sure we're gonna have plenty more opportunities to talk about Nereids and Naiads, but for now, they are gonna keep getting pushed down the line.
Just gonna keep getting they're the constant. They're
And
lingering in the background.
next chapter, we're gonna have the same problem, but for all sorts of other things. For as long as we're in the underworld, they're just gonna use underworld terms willy-nilly all over the place,
Yeah.
and there are just too many things for me to talk about them all.
Yeah. Well, here's what we could do, because we've talked about this before. So I like the idea of, for certain like holidays or special occasions, we do an episode it's a myth breakdown, but like for a god or for a specific myth, and we go deeper into it. It could be cool doing for like Halloween, right? For the month of October, we
That'd be a
have
great Halloween
like a
episode.
Hades episode, or we do an underworld episode where we just go super in depth, pun not intended, into the underworld. I think that could be cool.
That would be really cool. We might have to do that for spooky season.